Hello everybody, Exalted Hierarch here, and the focus of today's video is going to be hovering in the Lazer. You're not actually hovering, but you're going to be flying the aircraft much more slowly than it was ever intended. This is a lot of fun and allows you to do some really cool tricks like the things you saw in the intro. First things first, we got to learn how to brake without stalling. So go ahead and pull that left trigger over and over and over again, and the longer you hold it without stalling, the more effective this will be. Don't worry, if you hold it too long and do stall though, you'll just be able to bring yourself right back into action with the right trigger. Next up, we're going to have to learn how to air brake. Air braking is something I usually use to fly in formation with my crew, but in this case we're going to use it to initiate a hover. To air brake, all you've got to do is pull out your landing gears, dip down a little bit towards the planet, pull up really hard, and put those landing gears back in. This allows wingmates to catch up to you, and that's primarily how I use it, but like I said, here we'll be using it to initiate a hover. And you can maintain this slow speed by pumping the flaps as we discussed in the first clip. This is a pretty useful means of controlling the speed of your jet. Now that we've covered regular braking and air braking, let's go ahead and try our first hover. So while flying normally, pull out those landing gears, dip down, and pull up really hard while pumping the flaps as we discussed in the first clip. As you'll notice, the aircraft will automatically fall back towards the earth with a stall warning, but the engine will still be on. It won't actually stall if you've done it correctly. Now go ahead and pull those landing gears in and do it a second time. When you fall the second time with your landing gears in, you're now going at what's called hover speed. You don't want to allow your nose to point towards the ground though, so go ahead and save your fall by rotating the craft onto its side and holding the bumper of the wing that is facing the sky. That will continually maintain your craft in a jackknife position, and from here, your altitude and speed are controlled with pumping the flaps and delicate usage of the right trigger as necessary. Let's go ahead and talk about that throttling control a little bit more. As you can see in the footage here, I'm maintaining a slow hover, and I'm doing so near a whole bunch of obstacles. So my altitude is real important, and one thing you'll notice as you start to practice hovering is that you can real quickly lose altitude and plummet into something you don't want to hit. So that's really the hardest part of hovering, and that is something I can't stress enough, is that this technique is very hard. Do not expect to be able to do this after watching this video. In fact, being able to hover on the sort of level that will allow you to land on the things that we'll land on later is probably going to take weeks if not months of practice of doing this. So you'll learn, but just keep in mind it's the delicate balance between your braking and accelerating that allows you to maintain the altitude and speed exactly where you want it. Another way to initiate a hover is to just take off really slowly. Immediately assume the jackknife position, hold the bumper of the wing that's facing towards the sky, and pump those flaps. Pull the landing gears in, and there you go. You won't necessarily want to do this all the time unless you're trying to show off, but hey, that's kind of the whole point of this video. Hovering isn't an inherently useful combat technique, but we are about to discuss a few ways that it is useful for combat. First things first, the vertical dive is an opportunity for the pilot to easily crash into the ground, but if you perform an air brake right before you hit the ground, as seen in the footage, you can easily save yourself and redivert the craft to another direction. You can even kill someone with this. Now, another thing that we can do with this is we can concentrate a heavy amount of firepower in one small area by hovering over it and descending really slowly. As you can see here, I placed many more rounds in that small area than I would have otherwise been able to at that distance if I was traveling at a normal speed. Another way to use this in combat is to land on the road and attack players in unsuspecting ways. You can get your jet into tunnels or attack players who are inside clothing stores or a variety of other locations that may be otherwise inaccessible to the jet. I recommend if you're going to land somewhere precarious like this that you call off radar to make yourself less vulnerable. And yes, in case you're wondering, the cannon rounds do go through the glass of a store like that. Now, let's start landing in some fun places. First things first, I'm going to land here on this mountain. Landing on a sloped surface is pretty easy, and if you get stuck like I did here, all you got to do is wiggle left bumper, right bumper to get the craft rolling again. Landing on a mountain is easy. So let's go ahead and step it up a notch by landing on a few other weird places throughout the map. Landing in weird places like this is all about your approach, which again is controlled primarily by how much you brake and accelerate while initiating the hover. You don't want to go so fast that you're no longer hovering, but you also don't want to go so slow right at the point of landing that you drop the craft so heavily into the thing that you damage your craft. Whatever you're landing on, whether it be sloped or flat, you don't want to fall on it. You want to gently graze against it and then initiate your land that way. In this case, landing on top of Maze Bank is a little bit different. You want to approach from straight down below, and then right at the very end, you're going to arc up onto that helipad. It's really satisfying once you land this for the first time, and Maze Bank is a really good place to practice this landing technique. And you don't necessarily have to land on all the crazy stuff, but learning how to hover is useful as a pilot. Fun way to show off. As you can see here, who else knows how to land on the air traffic control tower unless they know how to hover? Alright, let's get crazy. Let's go ahead and land on top of this Ferris wheel. Ferris wheel isn't too hard to land on because it's a curved surface and it's a little bit forgivable, but you got to make sure you have the approach correct, and you got to make sure you stay centered. You also don't want to overshoot and fall off the other side like I almost did there. Now, this is the hardest thing in all of GTA to land on. I don't recommend you practice here. I recommend you practice with Maze Bank. But if you can land on this thing, if you can even stick it, that's impressive. Here, I kind of failed. I got all of the wheels on it earlier for my intro clip, and that was impressive, but that took me a couple of tries, I'm not going to lie. Like I said, this is a very difficult technique, guys. It is not something you're going to master in a day or two, so just be patient with it. And in case you were wondering if other planes can do it, well, there's your answer. Well, that's it for today. I hope you guys enjoyed. I hope you learned something, and more importantly, hope to see you guys hovering around Los Santos. I'm not going to make a Jets video next. I'm going to switch it up to something else. I haven't decided yet. There will be more Jet content, so stay tuned, and thanks for watching.